Hey y'all, it's Wallace Witness here. I'm gonna do my first reaction video. Took me a second to get this. So I may have had a little bit more to drink than I thought. I had to switch the way my thing did this to make the video not lag. Anyway, this is my second try. And we'll go through this Be a Man video by Vice and let's see what they say it's like to be a man. And I'm gonna be doing a little bit of drinking. Got some Jose Cuervo here. We're gonna do it right. I got something wrote up on what I think it's like to be a man. My wife and kids will probably drive up here soon, especially since it took me so long to get this going actually right. I hope I got it right this time. If not, it's probably not gonna happen. So I've been getting got some lime here, my salt, and we're going to take a shot and get this show on the road. Alright, yo. Let's do it. All I can do is keep being myself, and that's what I've been doing for 32 years. All of my haters came out, chasing my name for some clout. What are they angry about? They're climbing as high as their ladders can take them and screaming my name. But I don't look down. Hi guys. Remember me? I'm a white guy. Everybody wanted to cancel. Nice try. Too sick, I might die right. Fistful of middle fingers, I got no time for high fives. Too rich for a drive-by. Pay the pilot on my private jet to keep it low and do it. Alright, let's do this. Be a man.
Then you just ghost me. And the next week, I'm like hurting for cash. I'm like, I could have really used that 150. Like, why did I have to?
Also, the trade-off of like going on a date and as the man being like, oh, pay, or as the woman being like, oh, this sucks, I might get murdered, is like a pretty big imbalance.
How you guys doing?
That one person shouldn't even be on here because that's not a man.
My name's Krishna. Thank you all for being here and talking through masculinity, what it means to be a man, etc. Obviously, we couldn't fit every man in the country into this room. We tried to get a diverse perspective, but of course, that caveat, we're not everyone. I wanted to start by telling you why this is something that I'm interested in. I have an 8-year-old son, and I'm seeing him absorb what manliness might mean. I'm thinking to myself, like, what does it mean to be a man? To start, maybe we could just introduce each other to each other, and if you were to describe what it means to be a man or to be masculine.
My name is Tahoe. I'm a black man from the hood. When I was young, being a man, you had to be tough. You had to be hard. And now, to me, being a man is a lot different. Now, to me, being a man is knowing when to be soft. Knowing that you don't always have to run the charge. You can actually listen. You know what I mean? So things have changed a lot over the course of the years.
I'm Griffin, and I don't identify as a man. I'm non-binary.
You are a man.
I still have elements of, my identity that are masculine, elements that are feminine, elements that don't fall within that range. And I personally just don't feel tied to like the norms or the confines of gender at all.
Well, welcome.
My name is Dylan, and I think that the notion of masculinity is just something that can be possessed by man or woman. Man, woman, non-gender conforming person. What it means to be masculine is just like,
there are women that have
changing and like very fluid. But I think that, masculinity is something that just, like you embody based off of just like how you show up in this world as a man and just like, how you go about being your day-to-day.
How you show up. Interesting.
Yes.
What's up, guys? My name is Paul. I'm a fitness entrepreneur. I'm an immigrant. I came here when I was 4 years old with my family. It's kind of funny how we're talking about it. My take on masculinity is not about talking as much as doing. I think at its core, a man has to be efficient, competent, and be willing to do what it takes for themselves and their loved ones.
Damn right.
I was not always a good man. I was not always what you would call a healthy masculine man. And so as my life has changed, I've identified 5 points that I think make a truly masculine man masculine.
Okay.
I think point number 1 is a man who walks with God.
Yeah.
Point number 2 is a man who stands on principle. Point number 3, which is a masculine man, is self-sacrificing. So someone who is willing to sacrifice for point 4, the people that he leads. A true man is a leader. And number 5, a masculine man is never a coward.
That's a lot there.
Yeah.
Let's get into that as we go on.
That man,
I think what it means to be a man,
for the most part,
is responsibility. As a man, it can come with a lot of power, and with great power comes great responsibility. In short words. That's it.
That's from Spider-Man, I think.
Yeah,
Right?
that's what
Uncle Ben.
James.
Well, my name is James Killen, former United States Marine turned Air Force officer. Got a couple combat tours, but I'm also a father of 3 girls who mellowed me out. The idea of masculinity is something that I find interesting because it is changing, and I can actually see those changes in myself. And I think that's one of the reasons why I wanted to do this panel.
Thanks for your service. Andre.
Hey, what's up? Yeah, men. I think my idea of a real man is, someone that gets the job done, and provides and all that. I don't even know what that means anymore, but yeah, I don't know. It's changing every day.
How do you think it's changing?
No, it just seems like everything is changing every day. It's like a new world order, so I don't, I have a hard time keeping up with stuff, so I feel like tomorrow it's going to be something else, and people are going to comment and be like, you're wrong, it's this now.
It is hard to talk about some of this stuff because you feel like you might say the wrong thing.
I'm not really masculine myself, so I feel like I'm like the wrong person to ask.
Maybe the right person to ask. Christian.
What it means to be a man is to be a adult human male.
That's sort of a very formal definition, but I think that might be a good place to kick off because there's a lot of talk, of writing, of research these days that says there's a crisis in masculinity. Is there a crisis in masculinity? And if so, what is that crisis?
The thing that I see is a lot of deconstructing generational trauma. The be a man, boys don't cry, this, that, and the other thing. And I think that's actually one of the reasons why we see it as a crisis, because we're actually trying to redefine what it means to be a man, and none of us have any idea because we're just out here trying to be whoever we are.
That's right. I think that historically, being a man was rooted in patriarchy and misogyny. And now we realize how harmful that has been over the years. And so we don't really know how to define where we're supposed to be. And I think the reason that they're saying it's a crisis is because the box has gotten so small for just being, say, straight, just being a hetero, right? Because if you do anything, women judge you.
What do you mean anything?
If I dance a certain way, or if I wear my hair a certain way, if I dress a certain way, they go, real men don't do that. Real men don't do that. And so you get scared to move a certain way because you don't want to get judged or outed out of the accepted
real
part
man
of the community.
Doesn't give a damn.
And I think that kind of has us in an uproar, and we don't know where to be. Like, where's the safe place to be for men now? You know what I mean? And it's kind of disturbing.
I was what you would call a toxic masculine male growing up. And I had good men that sewed into me. They gave me good advice, but I never found manhood or never understood my place as a man until one day I humbled myself and I gave my life to the Lord Jesus Christ. And I'm telling you right now, walking with God changed my life forever.
Can you define toxic masculinity?
I would say toxic masculinity is like what he was just saying, where you're using that leadership role or that aggressive nature in a harmful way to harm other people to get your way. So the biblical structure for manhood is very humble. It's self-sacrifice. It's not self-motivated, but it is motivated by principle and standing on what's right. So there is a clear-cut vision for manhood in the Bible that I live by, and I think our culture used to live by, and I think our culture has lost its way.
I think everybody sort of has a different definition of toxic masculinity. I don't find masculinity toxic in and of itself, but I do believe in bad men, and bad men exist.
Well, yeah, there's bad men and bad women.
But does that mean every man is toxically masculine?
There's no toxic.
We were talking about a crisis on masculinity. I think that there's a lack of understanding there. So it's like masculinity, being masculine isn't toxic. It's just like there are portions of it that you can dive into that make it toxic.
Because I think a lot of what we think of masculinity is tied into patriarchy, right? Which is to say, like, for the longest period of human history, like, men dominated women and got the lion's share of stuff.
I think a lot of times some people make masculinity into a caricature.
See, men have no need to dominate women. Women, if you're having to dominate a woman, then you're not with the right woman. Okay, your woman is. I mean, I use the word submit, but that's not even the right. It's not a good word because women don't like that word. But they make themselves loyal to you. You know, if you got a good woman, she's gonna be loyal. And you shouldn't have to dominate her. That's just, but that.
Like it has to be this alpha bro tough guy.
Exactly.
And I find the low-key guy who, you know, is a really great father and a great husband and maybe not like drinking raw eggs every day to be a lot more masculine than the alpha bro who's going and like banging 20 women per weekend and not a responsible man. I find it more masculine to be a good guy.
I think the background of this is that we are saying that gender is this like real thing that has real ideas and implications. And Griffin, I'm wondering, as someone who identifies as non-binary, how does this conversation strike you?
Well, I think that it kind of becomes like irrelevant whether or not we attribute like having like a good ethical compass to being like masculine. Attributing that to like the gender constructs which we have made up, which are like somewhat pointless, like kind of just feed into needless roles that uphold the patriarchy without even knowing it. A lot of those things are just things that people should be doing because they're like morally right. Like if you're in a family, you should probably support your family. And I really don't think that it has to do with like your manhood.
These characteristics that we're talking about are baked into an old system of domestic life.
I think that's actually where we get toxic masculinity. Like none of us can really describe what it is, but we can see it when it happens.
So we learn it, right? This is something we learned from the world. It's something we learned from like TV and shit. And it's maybe something we learned from our dads too. Tell me about your dad.
I'm a first generation kid. My dad is from Guyana. Grew up in very humble beginnings, poor family. First time I remember my dad telling me he loved me was when I was 17. And he was like saying like he was proud of me because I was about to graduate high school and things like that, you know. I'm appreciative of all the other things, you know, being present as a provider, but in terms of like, you know, the conversation piece and like, oh, I want to talk to my dad about, you know, sex or something, or I want to talk to my dad about, oh, this person broke up with me and I'm feeling pretty sad about it.
First of all, no teenager wanted to talk to their dad about sex.
I didn't have those conversations.
So it's like emotional language as part of like how you talk to your dads.
Yeah.
And my definition of manhood came solely from my relationship with God. It didn't come from my father. It didn't come from the good influences around me.
Is God a man?
Yeah, and God is a man.
He is.
God.
It should be a man. I don't know if it that came out. If you interpret it for the Bible, it's a man, but I don't think it's a man or a woman. I think it's the spirit.
And God is a father, and he's a good father. He's a perfect father. And so I think there is a clear definition of manhood. Well, I guess that's where I diverge from everyone else in the room. I believe manhood is clearly defined by God. It is the perfect example of what a man should be.
Christian, I see you nodding your head.
I grew up in a divorced home. When you do grow up in a broken home and you don't have a father in the home, you recognize how important sort of both males and females are in raising a child and being in the home.
There's a balance between, you know, masculine energy and feminine energy.
Absolutely.
And I feel like there's both within everybody. And so there's a balance that with masculine energy in itself that I think a lot of people have trouble trying to like reconcile within themselves. Like, yes, being a man, you work hard, you take care of your people, but you got to be able to have that emotional side too, which is where the feminine energy comes in.
Y'all just like triggered something in my head when y'all was speaking about having both in the home. To me, I didn't really have it there. And it made me feel a way, but I think that I always wanted one. And so I wound up at a certain age going outside and trying to find what masculinity was outside. And so I went on the corner and there were 20 of us on the corner and none of us had dads. We were all messed up. And so we all taught each other the wrong way to love, to be loved. And then I think in society, there's way more people like that.
And a lot of kids who don't have fathers in the home, look for that father in the world or in a different way.
Well, first I think that like attributing like proper family values to like a heterosexual couple with children is like just not effective. Like I think that it's obviously like a heteronormative take to be like man and woman and then a child, and that's how you create like a good family. And whether it's like a single mother, single father, or like a queer couple. Like, I don't think that it's necessary to like attribute men and women to like certain roles in the household. I think that
It
it's
definitely is,
only
but-
due to nurture those gender norms that we follow.
Male and female matters. God gives you one of those identities, you take on that role. And now you're responsible for not or for fulfilling that role. There's a masculine crisis because men are not taking responsibilities
There is a
for the
masculine
God-given
crisis.
roles that they have in society. And so when you take away the need to say God made you this or God made you this, now you don't have to take responsibility for not fulfilling what you were called to do.
When you do that, you also take away other things that somebody else may do. If I have a woman or a partner that wants to take on certain roles and I say, hey, those are my roles that God gave me in society, now I'm suppressing that person. Like, at the end of the day, we're all human beings.
Yeah,
You define who you are and how you behave under God. That's what God gave us, free will. and
But also,
free
like,
speech.
I think that the
Feminism
religious beliefs should not
movement
be
is a
used to
bunch
like
of women
dictate
that
how
want to
other
take
people
over
identify or how other people
men.
live their lives.
Humans
Right.
need predictability, and when we put each other in these
You can have a
boxes, it gives
feminine-
us the
You
opportunity.
can have a feminine side as a man. You need to look to your wife. I always ask my wife for advice. I don't always listen, but I always look towards her to give me the advice that I wouldn't find from my bros, I guess you'd say, my bros, which is mainly my male co-workers. But, yeah, so I don't have a lot of friends, but I mean, I do, but I don't see. I work out of town a lot right now, man. But anyway, my whole point is there's the feminine side of a man, and sometimes a man has a hard time expressing that feminine side, and I'll give him that because it's so hard on a man. Like, men go through a lot of struggle. That's true. Excuse me. Because we're supposed to provide and be there for our wife and our kids in any way we can be, and take care of the home. I mean, there's a lot of things on our plate, but the most point is keeping a roof over our head, food in our plates, and clothes on our back, and it's like, that's not an easy task. It's not, especially not today. But they definitely need to have that feminine side. That way you can relate to your wife. You want to be able to express yourself in a way that your wife can relate to. And I try.
Opportunity to make decisions quickly, and I think that's what we're fighting is as a civilization at the moment, is the desire to put 7.5 billion people in specific boxes so that we can have some sort of predictability or stability in our lives. I was an emotionally abusive young man in my 20s because I had an idea of what my wife should do, and it caused a lot of
Who ain't in their 20s? Because you don't know nothing in your 20s. Honestly, you don't. In your 20s, you're still a kid. You're still a kid.
stress.
Why were you the way you were?
I had a lot of anger. I had a lot of pent up rage. I had some combat stress that I had to deal with also that I wasn't dealing with because men don't show emotion.
There is a social construct that benefits men. And so the responsibility that I've learned as I've gotten older is learning how to not enforce my power, learning over women, over people.
You're saying that role gives men more privilege, like an advantage and privilege. I'm saying that it is more self-sacrificing. I do not have free time. I do not have hobbies. I do not wake up during the day and do what I want to do ever.
Nope.
I'm thinking about my wife, my kids, my business.
But that's your decision, and that's not like a mandatory thing of your masculinity.
Well, if you believe that God is true,
I don't.
and you believe that He is God, then you do have that responsibility.
What privilege are you are referring to?
Okay, first of all, it's not even about believing. If God is true, it's not good for any man to be idle. It's not. You need to wake up. Use a routine. First of all, a routine is better for everybody in the household. For you, your wife, your kids. to have some sort of routine that you wake up and this happens, and you know how your day is going to go until at least to a certain point, you know. Once you get to that one point where like, okay, my work's done, it's time to rest, we can play, we can do whatever. Work, play. You know, I mean, is that not how it goes? That's how it's always been for me.
Like, what privileges do men
you
have?
play.
We've constructed this entire society to benefit us.
Break it down. Like, what privileges exactly?
Like, we talk about the wage gap, or if you look at Roe versus Wade, men controlling women's bodies.
Even if there
Men
might
do
be
not
those
control women's
privileges,
bodies.
there's also more men who commit suicide, more men incarcerated.
I think when you talk about like incarceration rates,
Women control women's bodies. Women are the most scrutinizing people to the other women.
and things like that, like things that men are a victim of, I think that it's
Sorry,
important to
forget
like
that.
recognize. Like,
I don't-
I don't think that men are oppressed solely on the grounds that they're men. I think that men like experience oppression based on like the intersections of their identities, which is, you know, why we see like different like lower class jobs being worked by men, or like higher suicide rates, or like incarceration rates going up,
Cheers.
because like men, like black men, brown men, indigenous men, queer men, trans men, etc. Those people like face oppression, they experience oppression, but it's not solely due to their identity as a man.
But I think dating and sex is probably a very interesting place to think about this, because it's a changing field as far as like what people expect of each other.
I date in New York City a lot, and dating wise, there's a lot that's like asked of a man. Like first dates are like nightmares.
I got a question.
Dude, it's like, I'm like, what do you want? They got like a checkbox, like, are you gonna pick me up? Are you gonna walk on the outside of the sidewalk? Are you gonna open the door? Are you gonna pull out the seat? Are you gonna pay for the meal? Are you gonna be interesting during the dinner? Are you gonna be funny during the dinner? And then when you walk home, are you gonna drop me off? Are you gonna watch me walk inside? And then are you gonna text me after? And it's like trying to defuse a bomb. Like if you think you're like red wire, blue wire, and you're like one little thing and you're just done. And it's like, I'm to the point where I'm like, I'm so tired of like paying $150 for a first date, and then you just ghost me. And the next week I'm like hurting for cash. I'm like, I could have really used that $150. Like, why did I have to, you know what I'm saying?
Like, the trade-off of like going on a date and as the man being like, oh, this sucks, I have to pay, or as the woman being like, oh, this sucks, I might get murdered, is like a pretty big, you know, imbalance.
On a first date, should the man
Yo,
or whoever
If you're going on a date and you feel like I might get murdered, you probably shouldn't have went on that date.
identifies as the man on the date, pick up the check? Show of hands, who thinks yes?
Yeah, should is a weird.
shit's a weird way to put it.
Okay, sorry. How would you put it?
I very much love gender roles. I like masculine men, and I want my masculine man to pick the check up. My friends seem to be the same. My girlfriends seem to want that as well. But I have a male friend who was naturally doing that. And with the dates he was going on with women, they were offended that he like took the check. So I think like, hey, if this woman doesn't want him to pay and she wants to show she can pay, go off.
I think it's a matter of preference. Like, you know, if someone picked it up for you, like you develop a kind of rapport, respect with that person. Like, so be it. If the other person,
Jet Li.
you know, the woman you're with doesn't want that, then maybe it's not the match for that person. So I think it's dependent on the situation.
I think that there's such a thing as financial abuse, and men seem a lot of time, because they spend, that a woman has to be under them or owes them something.
I think that's when you get toxic.
Me personally, I love to take care of my partner. I love that feeling that I give them, that they're
man
taken
likes
care
that.
of when they're with me. And that's
A
when
real
it's
man
with friends,
likes to take-
anybody. If
likes
you're
that
with me,
feeling of
I
taking
got
care
you.
of
Like, I guess what I'm hearing
his
from you,
woman.
Andre, is that there's like a lot of pressure to inhabit the masculine side of the social expectation, and yet you might not get the benefit that you would have expected generations ago, and that puts you in a weird position.
Yeah, well, we live in a city where there's 8 million people, and you know, a lot of these girls, especially if you're really attractive, guys are hitting on them all day. So they feel like celebrities. You got so many options. I don't blame you. I'd be the same way. Becomes like
There's always somebody better.
I think technology has a big part to do with that now. Like modern times, like online dating, Instagram.
Especially as a girl, you're gonna have 30 DMs a day.
Yeah, the DMs.
You know what I'm saying? Swipe it up on your picture.
I think that's a big reason why it can be tougher for some men.
I think what he's saying is there's a toxicity to femininity as well.
Yep,
there is a toxic side to
If
both
you want to say
genders.
if there's a toxicity to masculinity, there's definitely a toxicity to feminism.
I think anybody can be narcissistic, but I think that it's like weird to randomly attribute that to like women in New York because they're being complimented all day.
There's a term that's called absolute power corrupts absolutely. So, but that is when we talking about masculinity. That's what we've had. We've typically had that. We can do whatever we want, and we do it because we squeeze, we corrupt, we take. Historically, you take over things, places that you don't like, and you rape the women.
And now the women are taking over. Just say it. Just say it. You can look at it. It's happening. I'm not just being the bigot. Bigot!
And you take the gold and you do what you want because you have that power. Now when we see women have that power, we're like, whoa, she's literally just getting a taste of the power that men have had for centuries.
But on the flip side of this perspective of dating,
I'd honestly argue she's got a taste of more power. Right now, for sure. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I can't attest to that. In my life, I can't attest to anything before that. But in my life, the woman has had the most power.
of like the poor guy who goes on these dates and gets ghosted and it's a struggle to date. On the other side of that is men have more sex, men cheat more, they have more affairs. So if I'm a woman and I'm looking for a guy, I would be really selective. I would have a list of what I was looking for. And the guy flip side of this perspective of dating, of like the poor guy who goes on these dates and gets ghosted and it's a struggle to date. On the other side of that is men have more sex, men cheat more, they have more affairs. So if I'm a woman and I'm looking for a guy, I would be really selective. I
think that is negative. Women have more sex with more people. Men might have more sex with the same person, but men do not have the options as a woman does. A woman can go sleep basically with whoever man that will take her, in which that's a lot of men. A lot. See, that's where me and like, look, there's things like I don't agree with Andrew Tate on a lot of things, but there's definitely points he's made that's like I can't disagree with because it's thoughts I've had as a man. Like, but yeah, like, so he might have sex more, but as far as people he's had sex with versus people she's had sex with, a lot of times it's the female these days has had more partners. That's the price. That's it right there. Not more sex, more partners than that man has had.
would have a list of what I was looking for, and the guy would have to meet those standards and they would be high.
I think over the last several years, the Me Too
Pretty sure statistics. Sorry, I'm drunk. I started drinking a little bit before this video. Statistics would prove me right.
movement has given a lot of insight into what women are feeling in the workplace, what they're experiencing, how they're being abused and otherwise silenced, how institutions of power have kept them silent. And we've heard some really awful stories and some terrible shit. I want to hear from you guys what you think about what the Me Too movement did. Has it gone too far? What does it mean for you?
I think it's good for women to expose men who are doing evil things in the workplace. I think it's been a good thing in exposing sexual abuse. There's also the opposite side of that coin where women are allowed privilege to do certain things that men are not. So in the workplace, I was working in a place where a woman was grabbing me inappropriately, doing things that were inappropriate. And when you bring that up to your coworkers, you know what they say? They laugh and they say, you should be excited. Right? So if a man is sexually abused, the stigma totally changes.
Well, I don't think Me Too necessarily is what prevented people from believing you and your story. And like your story is valid, like I'm not here to suppress that, but I do think that like it's worth noting women are far more likely to be victims of sexual assault.
You just experienced a little bit of weakness that women feel most of the time.
When we're talking about constructs, you guys are saying we need to deconstruct masculinity.
Yeah,
I'm saying
that's
there are unequal biases with both genders.
When it comes to it not necessarily being as viewed as valid, it happens to be the case because of other men, though. You know what I'm saying? Like, other men are the people that downplay that, and that's where we come back to the talk of patriarchy and things like that.
I think it's
was
all
put
right.
in place by men and is enforced by men.
And I went for a walk to get dinner last night. And I walked several blocks because I wanted to check out a few things. And it was dark. Not a single time did the idea that I would be physically or sexually assaulted cross my mind. Not a single time. I can imagine that doesn't really work out for women.
It comes down to biological differences. As a man, you're more likely to be able to have more of a chance to fend off someone attacking you. As a woman, not really. So that's why, we have things like mace and tasers or having a gun.
Is it something about it's hard to admit that you're a victim?
Sorry.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
And to complain about it. People look at you like, remember Terry Crews? He can get his nuts squeezed and shit.
Right. It's like, why don't you do something? Why'd you let him?
Look how the
Who's
woman
Terry Crews?
you
I'm
do
not up
nothing,
to
like,
date
you a
with
bitch.
society.
So I
didn't even realize who Greta Thunberg
guys that grew up in
was.
super masculine houses, we don't really like to admit weakness.
Well, and it's in our language, right? Like, don't.
I didn't even realize who Greta Thunberg was for a minute. And then I saw a picture of her and I was like, oh.
Be a bitch, like, don't be a pussy.
Right.
Like, it's very
We
real.
internalize that.
But that's all examples of like toxic masculinity. Like it's never to invalidate somebody's experience, but like it must be obvious that like these are
I don't even know what they're
rules or
talking
roles
about right
enforced
now.
by
I'd say
men and
I
created
lost
by
track.
men.
Well, in toxic masculinity and power.
Don't be a bitch. Don't be a pussy. Don't. I'm sorry. I actually, that was probably
Kind
feminine.
of go hand in hand. I mean, we're talking about peanut butter and jelly.
You know what it is? I think sometimes we gotta go to work, and like if we're caught complaining about it, we're like admitting weakness. It's like you're not a man.
How does that feel?
It doesn't.
Oh, no. I complain about work all the time. You can ask my wife. If she shows up, I'll even ask her, do I complain about work all the time? All the time. Complain. All the time. I'm so ready. But it's because I've been doing my job for 14, 15 years now, and I'm just tired of it. I'm ready for something new.
It doesn't feel great, but that doesn't stop me from doing what I need to do. If you talk about a little bit of pressure that goes with it, yeah, there's a little bit of pressure. If you can withstand it, you become a successful man.
But what does that have to do with being a man? Like, surely like a woman can do all those things, so why even attribute it to your gender?
That's a good point, but I think also, if you're talking in terms of biological differences, generally, men are more logical, right? More reasoning.
Generally.
More
I
factual
disagree.
based.
There's no scientific backing for
agree.
that whatsoever.
I just think it's a commonly used stereotype. I mean, I'm
So
not.
what do you
Yeah,
think?
it's
Maybe
definitely
talking
less
about- okay, you guys can say that. I think more about me.
Emotional
Like, I'm more of like a
and more
logical,
logical.
factual based guy. Like I have emotions, but I don't let that deter me from what I need to do. Like my reasoning.
Do you talk with people about your emotions a lot?
I mean, I have friends. I have close guy friends I can talk to.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh, man. What
There's
a
an interesting
freak
thing
he
came
is.
out where like guys these days have fewer than 3 friends. Like it's hard for men to make friends
have
with each
no
other.
I think that's a big problem now. In
Because
modern
literally
times.
no
You hear
friends.
about the suicide rates
'Cause I
going
work
up. I think that's a big reason
all
for it. Men
the
aren't
time.
allowed to talk
Oh,
about it.
sorry. I was going to take a
with
shot.
safe people.
I'm
So if you
losing
talk about
myself
masculinity
here.
crisis, that's a crisis right there.
I
Should I
think
take
that
another
men find
shot?
friends very easily in terms of like, oh, yo, you lift 240, I lift 242. Let's like spot each other like basketball or whatever. But I think that we have superficial relationships in those friendships, in which like it's very like surface level. Like coming back to what you're talking about, we don't talk about feelings and things like that. That comes back to how you're brought up and how like boys are taught in certain ways how we go about talking to each other and how we go about expressing ourselves.
How much of this is men putting ourselves in a little box? I can tell you, I wouldn't have shared my emotions with people when I was younger, but I have people in my life now who I feel completely comfortable sharing my insecurities, my vulnerabilities, how I'm feeling. That ends up being one of
My
the
wife
reasons why
knows more about me than anybody in
end
this
up
world,
with
I'll say
limited
that.
friends. Because I mean, how many people can you actually feel like you?
There's nobody in this world that knows more about me than my wife, and that's why she's the most important person in my life. I've told my wife things I'd never tell. The second closest is my brother, and I'd never tell my brother things I've told my wife.
You can be open and honest with.
But there's something holding people back.
Yeah, and I think it's us. I think we're.
And I guess that is the feminine side of her that I'm able to connect to. I could connect to her in a way that I couldn't ever connect with my brother. And I get that. But as a man, you have a role. You have a role to play in this world, in this family. Just like the woman has a role to play. She's a nurturer. She's a giver. And the man is a leader. And it's just that it should be it's the taker. But that's because he leads. It's just the roles. I can't explain it. It's just what it is.
We're doing it because we're putting ourselves in this masculinity box, if you will.
I think that vulnerability for men oftentimes is viewed as surrender, and like that is that's an example of weakness in which like someone can possibly take advantage of it, or it used to be viewed as such, where it's like, all right, cool, like he cried, oh, that means he's soft, so now I can challenge him.
And this is something that I really struggle with as a black man that grew up in the hood.
In the hood,
you couldn't be soft.
You couldn't be soft.
You couldn't come outside. You know what I'm saying? So you had to take on this persona in order to be a quote unquote man. As I got older, I realized I still had to do that with women. I had to be a certain way for them.
That's because that's the way the women wanted you to be. You got to be a man. Women don't like feminine men. They might like them for a little bit. They're little fun toys, but they
look at me as a man. And if I didn't perform in that manner, they also called me a bitch.
Yeah, they want a real, like...
Right?
Poster.
So it's like, as progressive as I may want to be, is the world accepting of that as a whole? Because even if the other men don't like it, but the women like it, I might be like, I don't care what the guys think, as long as the women like it. But there were spaces where the women would like him. Look at him. He wants a finger in his butt. Sorry.
Let's talk about fingers in the butt.
You know what I'm saying? Like that's not my type of guy. He's not my type of guy. And I can't be open with sex or accepting having gay friends.
That's what you like?
But I can't, right. You can't be open about certain things because then you become questionable and you're pushed out of the safe space.
Sex is a different
I don't even know what that dude just said.
To talk about even with each other, especially if you do have some kind of...
Somebody comment, let me know what that man just said about finger in the butt. I'd like to know.
Because you're not allowed to be vulnerable. You're not allowed to be weak. You're not allowed to fail. And a lot of people that, when you say the suicide rates, you give up because you have nowhere to turn.
I kind of disagree with you on the fact that pressure is causing. I think it's more the lack of support and guidance for a lot of guys.
Dude, right here,
they don't know where to turn. Like a lot of guys, suicide, I think, is like when you lose hope, right? So they just don't have hope.
What about not wanting to go get it? Because there's places to be. There's people to go. You can go to church. I mean, you can go to therapy.
As much as you say that, but I don't feel like when you say guys don't want to express weakness, I think taking that step is hard for a lot of men. Because then that expresses weakness. It's hard for a lot of guys.
What's interesting that what I'm hearing is that as men, you also are victimized by the sexist expectations of masculinity.
It also makes it hard for men to love themselves and love themselves enough to understand that they're in trouble.
Female children. There's too many females in that house. You can tell that was a man that's been around way too many females. That used to be a man, but that man's got soft.
Before I did finally go to therapy and get the demons out that I needed to get out.
Just go, Jesse, where you at, Jesse?
It took me meeting a woman who actually made me want to love myself.
You found a woman who gave you peace and changed you a lot. Well, great if a man is dating a woman and she doesn't like that he's not masculine enough, it's kind of like, to me, I feel like too bad for him. He should go find someone else. That's part of the dating scene. Everyone has things that they like and things that they don't like.
I feel like your preference is your preference, but at like some point I think it's like noteworthy and responsible to like understand where those preferences or like originate.
Not necessarily. I think our life experiences form what we really want in our dating life. And because I grew up in a broken home and I didn't have a man in the house, I want a man who gives me security and protection. I don't think me deconstructing masculine is going to do that for me. I was missing that in my childhood, and that's what I want in a man.
I tend to diverge from like the Freudian daddy issues stuff when it comes to like what
Congratulations,
people like.
I'm so happy for you. I want a man who gives me security.
Thank you.
I think
Freud.
if I'm with a woman,
what did he say?
Bad dates I've had is when I'm like talking about my problems. I'm complaining about something. I'm not gonna see that woman. If I'm projecting more strength, I'm more charismatic, I'm positive, I'm probably gonna see that woman. So I think as much as like
I think I'm
guys,
good.
you know, you want
I think I can take it
a
a shot now, right? I might take 1, 2.
That's what I'm saying. That's what it is. Like, that's what I'm saying.
And it sounds like a lot of people are saying that's
one
wrong.
more. We probably
and it's like,
I'm not saying
it's
that's
like
wrong. I think it is what it is.
I just think that society teaches you have to be a certain way.
Had a few.
And that's really
and that's my issue because if this is who you are, your character, right? It just blossoms into this person that loves to pay for dates, loves to open doors, and loves to walk in the house, then that's fine. But when society tells you that from a young boy, that that's the only way to be as a man. This is the only way to be. And you think about things like, say, people on the down low that don't want to come out till later because they're scared of societal pressures, right? You should be able to be whoever you want without society telling you you have to be this way in order to fit in this box.
Pressure is on like the body. Like pressure is to be buff, to like look good.
There is a certain pressure, I guess you can call it, for guys to look a certain way, especially if they're trying to attract women.
Pressure.
So I think it comes down to just men who look a certain way tend to look more competent. They can protect.
I was just gonna add on to what you were saying. If a guy looks fit, if a guy looks strong, okay, as a girl, she's probably thinking, if I'm on the street and somebody tries to do something to me, I know that he can handle it.
I also think generally, like, guys who don't have the body that they're looking for are generally, they're not as healthy. It's not just a look thing, it's just a health thing.
Yeah,
you know, the body and mind are connected. If someone is strong, they're probably gonna look strong and they're probably gonna feel strong. So I think when you say it's a pressure, I think it can be construed as a healthy pressure. Hey, get strong, be strong, because you're gonna be a healthier and more mentally fit individual.
For example, I was a gymnast, and I think, you know, the training that I did not only trained my body, but it winded up training my mind and making me a stronger human, period.
As the skinniest person here,
pretty skinny.
You skinny? All right, as the second skinniest person here. No, it's like, I don't know. It's like, yeah, you do. I've had a bunch of girls like friend zone me, and I'd be like, why? And they're like, you're just too skinny. And I'd be like, damn. I mean, they kept it so real, I can't.
That's, yeah, kind of to say that, yeah. Is saying that there is a good and natural connection between like feeling good, healthy habits, looking good, and that there's a masculine ideal to that of some sort. Does anyone disagree with that here?
I do. Body diversity exists across like multiple spectrums, and I think that it's unfair to like only attribute like mental fortitude and like mental strength to like physical strength. Not having like a perfectly in shape body doesn't necessarily mean you're unhealthy by any means. And I also don't think it necessarily means that you like lack mental fortitude.
I don't think I'm saying that to look strong is the only way to be mentally strong. I think as long as you feel like you have a competent physical body, I think that's going to benefit your mental health.
How do you define competent?
Yeah, I think in terms of what you're trying to do. So are you a student? Like, what are your endeavors in life?
Me?
Yes.
I'm a student athlete.
Okay, what kind of sport?
I'm a springboard diver.
Okay, do you train to do springboard diving?
Yeah.
Okay, and do you feel good when you train and you do well on the springboard?
Yeah.
I think that's what I mean. That's what I'm talking about. If you feel competent at the endeavors you're trying to do, I think that's
But I think
what
that there
contributes to
are
it.
lots of like non-athletic people who may not be in like the same physical shape as like an athlete would be, who are competent in what they're trying to do because that like action has nothing to do with like their
Like,
So that's where I disagree with you. That's where I disagree with you. I think some people who don't realize the potential for their physical to blend into your mental is something that needs to be talked about. I think it's undervalued.
It's not that you have to work out to have a competent mind. It's that working out does help with competency. We already know when you work out, endorphins are released, people feel better. There's so many times I wake up, I don't want to go to the gym. It's going to be the worst day ever. I'm in a bad mood. I go, my endorphins are released. I'm great. I'm woken up. Like we have the science for that. So
especially
it's not like it plays very little. We've had presidents in wheelchairs that were very confident, successful men who couldn't walk. And so I'm going to say that it doesn't define you as a man.
I think there's always a
societal pressure to be in shape for men. I just
as a man,
I don't like when my stomach, when I'm having sex, and my stomach like is over a butt or whatever. Like I want to eat less, me, but
Paul can
nobody's
change
like,
that.
yo, you're fat.
We've spent all this time like deconstructing masculinity and all these things, but then it seems as though if a woman or someone dating says, hey, I want a swole guy, suddenly it's like, oh, sorry, I don't think that's a societal pressure. That's what that woman wants and she's entitled to have.
But I also, you know, I have body type.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Like I'm not gonna say what it is, but there's certain girls where I'll go on and I'm like, you don't really have what I'm looking. I don't say that because that's the dick, but in my head, I'm just like, this isn't gonna work.
So
I
it's
think
one
that's
thing to
fair.
have a preference and another thing to make like a sweeping like conclusion and then like broadcast it everywhere.
No, people are entitled to date their preference.
Because when you look at statistics, they say that 70% of CEOs are over the size 6'4", for example. So there is amongst men a pressure to be bigger, and bigger men tend to be in charge, and that's proven. Statistically proven. And so there is a pressure for men who are naturally smaller, naturally overweight, naturally not as fit, to become fit or to become bigger.
Oh, and every one of us here have heard little man syndrome. We've all
Who hasn't heard that
every one
saying?
of us have
He's got Napoleon syndrome. He's got little man.
Little man syndrome's actually it's actually little penis, little dick syndrome. That's where that really comes from. Not little man. Little man. But yeah. You see a guy in a big truck, little dick.
Man syndrome.
Yeah, that's a thing, though.
There's nothing you can do
Sorry
about it, and
for
that's
my
where
language.
that's where it
That's
becomes
just where
harmful.
I always
Specifically, like
heard
Short King Spring or whatever. Like a person, I mean, you
Never
can't
heard it was like
there's
little
it's
man.
like on
But
Twitter,
I
I've
guess
seen,
I can see that.
people getting a surgical procedure to break their legs and add 6 inches to their height or something like that.
It's stuff you can.
You know what I mean? It's like, but like besides that, which is like a really expensive procedure, is also like comes into socioeconomic background and things like that as well too.
And
it's
you're
like
never
you literally can't do anything about that. I think that's where it becomes harmful. Which like, all right, like if there is the pressure in which like I can't date a person or I can't like get a position or I can't do X, Y, and Z because I'm not a certain height or something I literally cannot change about myself. What now?
What is big dick energy?
It's when confidence crosses the line of arrogance.
Big dick energy is when a man is swinging around. He got all the confidence in the world, and he's being a man.
Told me I have BDE.
You have BDE?
Yeah, people told me I had BDE.
You did in that back room.
Not to show off.
Even he said, look at that.
I think BDE is like just a confident man. I don't think it's an arrogant man. I don't find arrogance to be big dick energy. I find it to be insecure. If you're arrogant, you're trying to like, I
find it so odd to equate somebody's like the size of their genitals to like the quality of their character. Like what? That's nobody's
There's a lot of
business.
options. More of just like
It ain't even about your size of your genitals. You can have little bitty penis.
See, but then it
Have
comes
big dick
now we get
energy.
into like a deeper conversation, which like some men see a value based off the size of what they're getting between their legs. You know what I mean? Yeah. So like that's why the conversation.
It's not nothing to do with what's in
place
between
because
your
people
legs.
feel as though like a man that's like more.
I'm taking a shot, y'all. I didn't really take
more
one.
like one, they're better in bed. They're like more
Don't
confident
judge me.
people. They're exuding a certain energy. So that like the stereotypes. So the stereotypes associated with having a big dick.
It's a lack of a need to overcompensate to society because you're adequate.
You know what you got.
You walk with confidence because you can tell when somebody's putting on because they lack in certain ways. And men, me, and people I know equate manhood and masculinity to their dick size and how much money they got. Like, it's like, yo, you feel more confident.
And sometimes that kind of stuff bleeds into violence. And you see that in domestic violence situations, like men are like the perpetrators of that by and large. There's something wrong with masculinity when it becomes violent.
100%. I also think because of testosterone and a number of different things, men are inherently more violent.
But being able to control it, that's
we
important.
should teach
It's being able to control
That's where
it.
the responsibility comes in.
Yeah.
I think, you know, you hear the whole saying like, it's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And I think there's a lot of wisdom behind that saying.
Oh, George Orwell said people sleep peaceably in their beds at night because rough men stand ready to do violence on their behalf. I think that's a big thing, but the key is to be ready, to have the ability. And also the humility and the confidence to not use it unless it's absolutely necessary. I don't think we teach boys that enough because I think promoting violence is extremely toxic.
Is there something inherently violent about masculinity?
Inherently violent? I don't think so.
No?
I don't think so. If a majority of men were bad, evil, violent, a lot of us would not be sitting here today. Okay, we'd still be in the Stone Age. You know what I mean? That's why I kind of push back against that idea that inherently men are violent, inherently masculinity is bad, is violent, because I don't believe that that's true.
Why do you think that such a vast majority of mass shootings are done by men?
I think that's a mental health issue. I think that, and this is why we're talking about men in crisis. Yeah, because men are more willing to do what they have to, to not do what they have to do, but to take action in terms of that. And that's how we're talking about this, men in crisis. A lot of those mass shooters are males because a lot of males, they don't know how to have an outlet or to find outlets to talk about what their issues are. That's what it comes down to.
We know that these mass shooters, most of them are white males. We know that. So when I talk to a lot of white males that have traditional values, say, or maybe a traditional upbringing, they feel like they've been made to be the villains of society. And so I feel that pressure a lot of times. I feel like, hey, like when we're having this conversation, even I hear words like patriarchy, traditional society, right? So I feel like I'm being put in a box and made to be the villain. And I hear this from a lot of white males. I feel like I'm the bad guy. I feel like I'm the villain. So maybe at some point, mentally, they're breaking and becoming that villain. They're becoming that monster that they've been made out to be.
Be the exception. Yeah. If you're worried about being put into a box that is one that is like clearly harmful based on like what people are doing, then don't do that. Mass shooters is like obviously like a sensitive topic, but a lot of them are like men with like little to no friends who like go out and in like a burst of rage commit like atrocities. And I don't think that it has to do with how they're hardwired as men. I think that it has to do with how society like treats people like that.
I agree with you on the point that men need support and they need someone to talk to and talk about these issues.
I don't think that men have been taught emotional intelligence throughout life, right? We know, so we respond with anger. All right, if I'm disappointed, if I feel resentment, or I feel contempt, or I feel embarrassment, or I feel jealous, or any of these things that fall under that one thing, we respond with one way. And if we learn how to communicate better, if we were able to say, yo, you know what? I resent that you spoke to me that way. Or, I feel jealous, of whatever. If it was okay for men to express those things, we wouldn't feel the need to just go, you know what? Fuck you.
You take any two 3-year-olds. Take a 3-year-old boy and a 3-year-old girl. I have 2 girls. Their first instinct is to lie to me, to manipulate me, to say their sister said this when she didn't. I have a friend that has all boys. You know what they do? They throw a fire truck at your head. Bam. That's a natural response. That's not a learned behavior. They're taught.
Oh, that's totally a learned behavior. And you give kids only like cars and gun and G.I. Joe action figures and give girls Barbie dolls. Like you.
I don't think you could say it's one or the other. I think there is some interplay between both.
Yeah,
thank you guys for your honesty, your like willingness to go to uncomfortable.
I got a boy. I got a girl. He's the oldest, and 2 boys. The youngest ones are the boys, and so. Both of the boys, I see them. I see it. I seen it in my oldest boy and my daughter first. One would blame the other for other. Now I see it in my 2 boys. They always blame each other. My daughter's kind of a tomboy, so I've seen all that from all of them.
Comfortable places, willingness to debate one another. Yeah, I'm interested to see like what sticks with me like in days to come after our conversation, because I think so many things were raised in such sort of a diverse perspective group.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
So nice to meet you.
Yeah, nice to meet several.
Well, that's it.
I should have discussed the importance of handshakes.
Just to be like you guys said, masculinity is something I think that is misunderstood.
You know, I had some people agree with me and disagree with me.
The entire thing is uncomfortable. And
My favorite part. Oh, that's hard.
Agreeing to disagree with certain other people. And
I liked when things turned into like this weird conversation about daddy issues.
There should be a.
Y'all got my number. When you gonna do another one?
What was I
See,
thinking?
daddy
when the
issues never even
conversation
came
went
up.
to buttholes? How do I answer that?
See, I watched the Vice panel on feminism. Sorry. Maybe I didn't start it good. I watched the Vice panel on feminism. Oh, I did, didn't I? And I follow Sydney Watson. And from what I heard, that was like a 4 hour talk that got cut down to like 45 minutes. So I hear no daddy issues in there.
The be a man, boys don't
No
cry.
daddy issues
this, that,
I
and the
heard
other
in
thing.
any of this.
And I think that's actually one of the reasons.
And you notice when he said something about the daddy issues, they kind of cut it short. Well, my wife and kids ain't showed up yet. It might be. I guess I ain't gonna get to introduce y'all today. My take, I got it wrote down here. So what should a man be? You know, I got a man first should serve God. That's the first thing a man should do is serve God. He's under God, and then the woman under him, and then the children under the woman. I know a lot of people don't like that saying, but that's just the way it says it in the Bible. And a man should not spread lies or negativity and be true to his word. So a man should always be positive. Spread the truth. Spread the truth of the light that is Jesus. Because we should be right there next to Jesus. You got God, Jesus, husband, wife, children. And he must be a good provider. That's just me. This is going me right now. A man should be a good provider for his family. But if you are serving God, God provides. So a man wouldn't even have to worry about that, because if he's serving God, God will provide. And he must listen to his wife, and be there for her emotionally. Take advice from her and lead and make decisions based on his knowledge that he has learned from being close to Jesus, the Spirit, being close to the Father. So he needs to take, a man. I always ask my wife for advice when it comes down to the final decision. I usually try to make the final decision. I don't know if it always happens, but I try to be the one that makes that decision. And I think that's the man's role, is to make those kind of decisions. And because of our role to play in the cycle of what we call life. Be a father. No man should have a child and not be a father to that child. And being a father means supporting your kids, physically, emotionally, just being there, because a kid just wants you to be there. Listen, be there. I'm sorry, I got this paper flapping. The kid just wants you to be there. And then here's my other little note. So if a man doesn't have a family, then he should devote all of his time to being close to God. Because that's when a man can truly follow God to the fullest, is when he doesn't have a kid or a wife that he'd have to give up for God. So if you don't have that, and you don't ever plan on having that family, you should, because that's the reason God gave us a woman in family is just think about an idle man, a man that's sitting there with all the time on his hands, right? He's not going to do anything good with that time if he doesn't have God. He's not. He's gonna destroy himself. And that's what I got. So that's it, y'all. I'm gonna do one more shot. I'll just do it off camera. I ain't worried about y'all guys. Alright, y'all. Have a good night, evening, whatever it may be. And remember, be blessed. Look to the Lord for advice and thank Him every day for this life that you have the chance to be here. Amen, y'all. Good night.